I don't see it
Yeah, and
either.
I don't know how to get rid of it.
I don't
Oh,
see
okay.
it either.
If you
All right.
look at the bottom where the slides are showing, or where the every little face is, there may be
Yeah.
something that looks like a slide there, and click on that, and that should fully present the slides in your screen.
Okay, I'll try that.
Hi, Liz. Welcome aboard. And you're on mute, obviously. Go ahead and shut off your video, please.
Yes, I will do that. Good to see
Thank
you,
you.
dear.
Good to see you. Okay.
Okay, maybe I'll just go ahead and make the announcement then,
Okay.
so we can get started. How's that?
Sure, go for it.
Go for it. Okay. One of the things that, of course, I think everybody's pretty much aware of right now is the division has some seasonal readiness goals that they're working on to make sure that we're ready for nationally for the hurricane season, but also for division wide. We have a tendency to not worry too much about hurricanes, but we do worry about wildfires. So we have an initiative to get a lot of people trained and ready to work in shelters if need be. So what I'd like to have you do is put in the chat box whether or not you've taken your COVID-19 training and if you're shelter qualified, and just put that in the chat box just so we were asked to do reminders for everybody at the beginning of all these sessions. So that's where we are right now. And I'm going to hit the, well, it says the recording has already started. So we're good to go. Jamshid, it's
Great.
It's all yours.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Welcome everyone to our panel. We will be talking about in-kind donations, unsolicited donations, and fundraising or development. A couple of housekeeping. Please mute your microphones while you're not speaking. And Diane, I think you need to do that too. You're blinking too much. We normally ask you to sign in so we know who you are, but at this point it's not necessary because we will get the record. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and type it in the chat. We will be monitoring the chat. And if you want, you can raise your hand as well. We kind of like you to wait. We will give you time to be able to ask questions right after presentation. So with that said, our presenters are going to be, I'm going to be doing in-kind donation, and Diane will be doing unsolicited donations, and Camilla is going to be doing fundraising for us. Somebody has their microphone open and getting a lot of things coming through, please. Okay. So my name is Jamshid Kiani. I'm the in-kind donation lead for Pacific Division. I've been with American Red Cross for approximately 6 years and been deployed in person 26 DROs all over the country in either in-kind donation or training. Those are the two that I go out on most of the time. Diane, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
I can. My name is Diane Meckers, and I've been a volunteer in the Cascades region, which is Oregon and Southwest Washington. And I've been a volunteer for almost 20 years, and I've done a variety of things in operations management, and I primarily work now in logistics as an AD. So that's pretty much who I am. I'm also the government liaison lead, as you can see on the slide here for this region.
Thank you. Camilla, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name's Camilla Balutian, and I am a regional philanthropy officer. I have been a fundraiser for the American Red Cross for 9 years, and I work in steady state, and then I support during times of disasters corporations.
Perfect, thank you. So let's start talking about in-kind donations. In-kind donations are the goods and services that American Red Cross needs in a time of disaster, or actually they are mostly non-financial goods and services from partners and community in support of our mission. This activity is part of the logistics group on disaster relief operations and works with supply management to fulfill all requested items and services. The in-kind team on a DRO works closely with shared services, disaster finance, to leverage the best financial opportunity for soliciting donations from known contributors or seek out new donors and confer with IKD doc to identify the best course of action. Okay. So to qualify as an in-kind donation item or service, it must be included in service delivery plan. It must be budget relieving or service enhancing, and benefit an overall relationship with the donor. That one is a really interesting one, and I am sure that we will talk about it a little bit more in the fundraising part. But in general, we accept some items, although we don't need them, from a large donor just to keep that relationship alive and happy. And last but not least, the item must be or service must be asked for on an approved 6409 with a requisition number. And it is really important that it has to be an approved one. People have tendency of asking for things and then not really working with it. So what are the differences between UDM and IKD? Now I'm going to just touch on this very briefly. Diane is going to go ahead and get into it in much more depth. So unsolicited donation management are donated goods by community, and they are not budget relieving or service enhancing, and they're not part of our service delivery plan. In contrast, in-kind donation are items and services which are budget relieving and service enhancing, or that they're asked specifically for by a 6409, and they are part of our service delivery plan. And we keep track of the in-kind donation items in our SPT system, which stands for Supply Procurement Tracker. Excuse me, I think somebody has their mic on. If you would please turn it off. I'm hearing a lot of background. Yes, please, everybody mute your, okay.
I'll go ahead and check again. And if
I'll-
not, I'll mute everybody.
Just mute everybody and then I'll unmute myself. Okay, there we go. That's better. Okay, so let's take a look at what a service delivery plan looks like. This is just a part of a service delivery plan. As you can see, this is the part that is used by DES, Distribution of Emergency Supplies. And in this, you will see that on a line item, service delivery plan is an ever-changing and evolving document that changes with the conditions and the needs of a disaster relief operation. Service delivery plan provides a blueprint for items and services that we will need for American Red Cross to deliver relief to affected clients. On this part of the service delivery plan that you're looking at, there is a line item for 240 totes. So we're going to kind of follow this along as a scenario to see how we are going to get this, with the caveat that we are going to be looking at the in-kind donation. So here we get a 6409 from the DES manager, which specifies 240 storage totes, and they would like to have that in 3 days. Those are the important part, the numbers, and it gives us kind of the parameters of what we need and when they need it. And you can see this is right here. Okay, so this is basically the workflow that we follow. All 6409s are sent to supply activity. Supply team members review and input their request into SPT supply procurement tracker and look to determine the most effective way to fulfill this request. DES managers has presented a 6409 for 240 totes with all appropriate signatures to supply. Supply team first verifies all information and signatures, then inputs all required information into SPT and uploads the 6409 to SPT. Next, they will check the local warehouse for availability and find none. Then they will go ahead and check with regional warehouse and the DFSC, Disaster Field Supply Center, for those totes. No one has them in stock or can deliver them in time. So they send the request to in-kind donation. In-kind donation team confirms the information on the request and in SPT. Most likely, no small store will have that many on hand, so IKD team determines that the best course of action is to look at the national partner with a local outlet to donate these items. So before we go on to looking at that transaction, let's take a little look at our donors with a national footprint. Now, this part, Camilla, we'll talk more in depth about this, but just that keep in mind that each one of these national donors have a procedure for being contacted, for being asked for an item. Now, some of that is published, and that publishing is updated and it is on Exchange. It's called the IKD Go Kit. And if you look in that, amongst other wonderful information that Go Kit has, it has a chart which tells you what company has what equipment and how we are supposed to contact them. So if you see red, that means do not contact them directly under any circumstances. Okay? If you see green, that means that you can contact the local branch, or you may go and talk to anybody in that company to ask for what you need. If you see yellow, that means that it has some restrictions. But either way, if you are working on a DR as a person who is not in-kind donation related or officer, please go through the in-kind donation person to contact any of these companies. And this list actually changes, and our relationship with all of these companies change. And there is another location that you can go and look at, and that is the RC View National Operations Summary. And if you look down here, you will see that there is a in-kind donation report. This actually will give you, I'm sure you cannot read this, but this will give you the name of the company, and this actually shows you the amount of budget that we still have with them, or amount of resources that they have pledged to us. So that way we can check and see if actually we are able to contact that company. Next, we will look at the supply procurement tracker. This is the system that supply, warehousing, everybody is working toward, and this is where all the information goes into it. There's going to be another session tomorrow for this. I'm not going to go into it at all, just letting you know that this is the mainstay of supply and in-kind donation and warehousing. So, and this is what it looks like. It records all transactions, as you can see over here. It gives you the requisition number, the date that it was in, delivery location, what district it is in, what group is asking for it, items, and the date that is required by, and then it's color coded. So by just looking at this, I can tell that this one here is missing some forms, and it is not, hasn't been set up correctly. All the red ones, that means they're missing a lot of stuff. The green one that is delivered means that everything is set up and it is done. And then up here, these allow you to filter by anything that you would like. If I want to know what all of the in-kind transactions are, I can filter it by IKD, and it will do that. So you will see that there is a IKD here. There's procurement, there's warehouse. Okay, I see someone has their video on. If you please turn it off, I would appreciate it. Okay, Jordan, could you please turn your video off? I appreciate that. Okay, and since we have to upload all of the information and all of our forms into the SPT system, and we probably don't have a scanner close by to do that, we have come up with this wonderful Power app that it should be on all of the Red Cross job cell phones, and you can actually download it to your own cell phone. This actually allows you to go ahead and take a picture of the forms that you want, give it a name, and upload it into the system to the requisition that you want. It allows you to change the status from on hold or delivered, or whatever the status may be, and it will allow you to change the fulfillment. So this will take the place of much needed scanners on a job, and you can do that at any place. It makes life a whole lot easier. Okay, so let's go back to our totes, and we're able to go ahead and order the totes. We found our national partner, and we have put all the information in SPT. And at that point, we will let the warehouse know what time and when and at what location they're going to receive those totes. And we will wait for them to let us know that they have received the totes, and they will upload whatever receipt or the bill of lading that they may get from the truck, put it back in there. We go and check it and make sure that everything is okay. And at that point, we let supply know that they have arrived and ready for deployment. Makes life a whole lot easier. Everybody can look at the SPT system across and find the information and know what state we are in as far as deployment, as far as getting the information and the items that we need. So going back to, this is one of the sticky parts of in-kind donation, and that is how we handle cash, gift cards, or gas cards. Gas cards are simple. They are just an IKD item. We accept them, we input them into the system, and we give them to transportation to use as they need it. Or we can give them, depending on what the disaster relief operation decides, we can give those to recovery to give to clients as needed. The difficult part is the cash and the gift cards. At this point, I have not been able to find a actual procedure for accepting cash and gift cards, and this has been a problem for us in almost every DR. And it is this is a conversation that the in-kind donation will have with the DR management to make sure that it is done the way that they would like it to do. The one thing that we don't want to do is to accept the gift cards and input them into our SPT system as an in-kind donation gift received, then give those cards to our procurement and have procurement go out and purchase items for the disaster relief operation and input them into the SPT again as in-kind donation items. That will cause us to double dip, and a $5,000 gift card becomes a $10,000 expense. And we don't want to do that. So that as soon as we go into the system and there is a DR, we talk with the management and decide how they would like us to take care of that. And we're working on it nationally to come up with a way to do this. And Diane is going to talk a little bit more about the actual nuts and bolts of how we accept cash from people who would like to give it to us. If we can talk them into going to redcross.org and donating online, then we do have a procedure that we recommend that everybody follows. And to make life easier for our, okay, next we're going to talk about a little bit about the difference, and Dan will talk about this a whole lot more.
Jamshid, we do have
Yes.
one question here for you.
Go for it.
What is the name of the Power app that you mentioned?
Okay, it's called SPT. Hold on, let me make sure that I'm giving you the right information. Let's see. There it is. It is called, that app is SPT2 PIC. No, PIC2 SPT, I'm sorry. PIC2 TO SPT. And that is a Power app that you have to download Power apps from your Red Cross email and then find that. It is
Okay,
not a...
When during the next segment, when somebody else is presenting, can you go ahead and put that information in the chat box?
I sure will do.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so when unsolicited donation management, or the person who is running unsolicited donation management, receives an IKD item, then that happens a lot. Sometimes it is water, sometimes it is like underwear that is sealed and we can distribute those items. The unsolicited donation management will accept them, will give out a receipt for it, and then they need to fill 6455, which is resource management form, and send that form to in-kind donation team so they can put it into the system. And then, they don't need to do any of the paperwork into the system. The in-kind donation will take care of it. Okay, and this is a simple form that we have come up with. Basically, it just gives the in-kind donation the minimum necessary information so we can follow up and fill up the 6455. And that way, since that is an online form and it is hard for somebody at the shelter accepting unsolicited donations, to get a computer and fill up all that information, we just go ahead and use this little simple form, and then we can go ahead and follow it up and make sure that we get all the information that we need on the form. Okay. So remember, to qualify as an in-kind donation item or service, it must be included in a service delivery plan, be budget relieving or service enhancing, benefit overall relationship with the donor, and have to be asked for on an approved 6409 with a requisition number. That means it has to be in SPT system before that we can actually go ahead and start asking and trying to figure out. Okay, any questions? Okay, any questions? Go ahead and.
I don't see any questions in the chat box at this moment. So if you could put in the
Okay.
information about the app, that would be great.
Okay, so, well, I'll say it again because it's a slow. Okay, so you have to go to your Red Cross email, click on the 9 little dots up on top under apps, and find Power Apps. And then download that into your system. You can actually do this on a computer and a tablet as well. It works on a computer, tablet, or your phone. And once you have that, then you look through the list and you will find, it's called Pick to SPT. And just go ahead and choose that. You don't need to download anything after once you have done Power Apps. Power Apps are kind of an extension of our SharePoint system. They're just like a little routines that we have written that will interact with our SharePoint, which SPT is actually a SharePoint with a front end. Getting a little bit too technical, but that's what it is. Okay, and if anybody would like to, what I will do is I will put in my email address, first name, last name, and redcross.org, and send me an email and I can walk you through it, setting it up for you. I'm always available to help out. Okay. Diane, you're up. Would you like control?
Yes, I would. Nobody has ever asked me whether I would like control before.
You are in charge.
Okay. This is, we're going to talk about unsolicited donations. And again, and try to clarify what the difference is between unsolicited donations and in-kind donations. And let's see, it is not letting me do anything here. My cursor is running around. Okay, just a second. Huh. Okay, what we're going to talk about a little bit is how you plan for handling unsolicited donations, how you then receive them, the distribution of donated items, and then we're going to just talk about a couple of pretty frequently asked questions. Okay, if this will let me do it. Well, Jamshid, it's not letting me do anything. You're going to have to, gee whiz. Okay, so it's really delayed here. Okay, so first of all, it's important for us to all really understand what an unsolicited item actually is. And they are typically items that are donated by members of the community or local businesses in and around the immediate disaster affected area. That may mean used clothing, toys, household goods, bicycles. It could mean anything that are dropped off at a service delivery site. These are items that have not been requested by the Red Cross, and they're not in the service delivery plan, which means they are not items that the Red Cross has deemed essential to our being able to provide shelter and feeding for clients. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The other thing I think, although that's the real common way that we receive unsolicited donations, it's not the only way. It's not unusual maybe to have a semi-truckload of goods dropped off from some community that may be 2,000 miles away. And so we always have to be prepared for having that kind of donation show up at our door. Very frequently, there's no notice, we don't know that it's coming, and it just plain shows up. So it isn't always just stuff from the local community. Okay, so let's look here. This little chart helps a little bit in terms of what the differences are. So unsolicited donations, again, community, they may or may not meet a need, particularly like in a shelter. There's no question that if somebody drops off shoes, somebody in the shelter may need those, but that is not a need of the operation at that particular time. It may not be a part of the service delivery plan. It is generally used or in very small quantities. There's no you're not able to really provide all of the items to all of the members in the shelter, for example. And we have to keep in mind, how then do we provide equal service to everybody? And so that creates a problem when you only have, 5 toys and you've got, 45 kids. How do you manage that? So typically, again, the donor may be a local community member, but it also could be from outside the community. And the unsolicited donations are managed by Mass Care, not logistics, managed by Mass Care under the distribution of emergency supplies arena most of the time. The other things you can see that in-kind donations are things that we've asked for. We've looked and vetted an offer of items and matched that with a need in the shelter. We may get an in-kind, maybe large quantities of goods, and the donor actually they either require or have a relationship with the Red Cross beyond that single donation. For example, Home Depot or Lowe's, Target, some of those kinds of things. And the in-kind donation process is managed by logistics with the in-kind donations staff. Now let's see here if I can. It's not letting me. Okay. We've talked about who and in the unsolicited, in the in-kind donations, you may actually have a unsolicited donations management lead on a big operation. You may have a person that's what they're focused on. In a smaller operation, it may be just a part of the job of the DES lead. Okay, we had a question in the chat a little earlier about donating during COVID, and the reality is the answer is no. We do not accept unsolicited donations during COVID-19. And in particular, we're talking about goods here. And we don't accept used clothing. Part of the reason for this is we can't sanitize, we have no way to go through things, make sure they're clean and good repair and all of that sort of thing. That's not what the Red Cross does. We have partners that do that kind of thing. And so all of those donations, even in a COVID situation, can be directed to partners, but under no circumstances, we don't accept unsolicited donations during COVID. We do always have to thank people for their interest in helping their community, because that's really what it's going to amount to at that point. And we need to thank them and be appreciative of their interest in donating to the Red Cross. And we need to explain why we can't take donations at this time. So we're going to talk primarily about UDM in a non-COVID environment, because at some point, hopefully in our lifetime, we will get back to some semblance of normalcy. And so UDM, may come back sooner than we may think, or at least in some form. And the bottom line is we have to work with our community partners and external affairs and the local development team and anybody else in the organization to really manage unsolicited donations. This isn't just something that, oh, well, we've got somebody sitting at the reception desk at the door, and so they'll handle stuff that comes in. Unsolicited donations can be a huge, huge activity, and with a lot of moving parts. So it really needs to be managed. It is managed best, especially for large operations or in areas where we have frequent large operations, to have memorandum of understanding with some of our partners ahead of time, so that when the hurricane hits, we know where those unsolicited donations are going to go and who's going to do what, who's going to pick them up. Do we have to deliver them? Do we have to provide the transportation? Are there requirements about what they will or won't take, and that sort of thing? So you have to, if you're in an area that has frequent events, this is a good steady state activity to get all this stuff lined up ahead of time. It's really a part of that whole management of unsolicited donations is the messaging that goes out, because certainly we want to minimize the amount of stuff that gets dropped off at a shelter, for example. So it is really important that the messaging goes out early. Do not send, the Red Cross does not need donations at the shelter, blah, blah, blah. Please take your donated items to whatever partner it is that we've agreed to will accept this stuff. So it may be, the messaging may be, please take any donated items to the Salvation Army. They are making sure that the items are appropriate for distribution to clients. We need to make sure that we're working with our community, internally with our community partners group, to start identifying who's going to accept donations and so on. And we need to keep our government partners informed about what's going on. We certainly don't need bad press around government or around unsolicited donations, and it can get real bad real quick. And I can tell you one experience that I had with unsolicited donations. We were in Louisiana. Some people came by, dropped bags of clothing off and at a shelter. the shelter workers looked at it. It was full of bugs and fleas and lice and all kinds of things. And they just took it and after the donor left, and they took it and put it in the dumpster because nobody was going to be able to use those items. Unfortunately, somebody drove by, saw people in Red Cross vests throwing bags of donated items into a dumpster. It hit the press, and it was a mess. So, you just have to handle this stuff with the eye that somebody's watching all the time.
Okay, Dan, you have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Jerry is asking, do we have a partner who will take away unsolicited donations if they build up regardless of our messaging?
That's a really good question. And I think in some areas, yes. Some areas, and depending on the volume, after a while, even the partners may say, okay, we've had enough. We've taken 5 semi-loads, take the 6th load somewhere else. And that becomes an issue, and it's an ongoing issue. But yes, the Salvation Army and local thrift stores take items, they sort them, make sure they're in good repair, and are in fact usable for people. So the answer to it is yes.
Okay, and may I add that we do have on a DR, we have daily calls with community partners. And when we get to that point, we start begging online for people to come and help us out, or other organizations. And most of the time they react to it pretty much. Okay, Scott asked, with the restrictions of the numbers on the ground at shelters, this is a critical point.
And absolutely. And when we're looking at non-congregate sheltering or even congregate sheltering in this COVID environment, the messaging out through our partners, through our government partners, our community partners, and through our public affairs people, that early messaging is absolutely critical, because we are not going to have enough people on the ground to manage a huge unsolicited donation process. That is going to be just critical. So that's a good point, Scott.
Exactly. And then Carolyn says, but most of it started by announcements the news media that makes.
Well, I think some of that is true. I think the bigger issue is social media. Something gets started on Facebook, and before things are out of control. So currently our public affairs people continually monitor social media and start and try to stop some of that stuff. I know in this area we have wildfires, and every single year there's a big thing that goes out and says firefighters need socks, and so all of a sudden and take them to the Red Cross shelter. And so we will end up suddenly with all these people bringing socks for firefighters, and the fact is they don't need them, and it becomes a problem for them. And so really getting out in front of that is extremely important, whether it's traditional media, social media, posting, whatever it might be. Yeah, we just have to get out ahead of it. Okay. We'll see if it moves this again. Huh. Okay, so the bottom line is, regardless of how big or small your operation is, whether it's a level 2 or you're in the middle of think you're going to have a level 6, you need to prepare for receiving those donations. You have to identify a site. Where are these donations going to be placed? And again, it needs to be, things need to be bagged, and that means people may bring you a whole armload of clothes. You need to have bags available to put things in. You need to be able to secure the items so that you don't have people just coming and picking up things. You know, you're creating an unintended distribution site in the back parking lot. That's not what you need to do. And it needs to be out of sight. Again, coming back to the story I just told you, you need to try to have this out of sight of the general public. Excuse me. Everybody, all the Red Cross workers, and that includes EBVs who may be working to accept and manage these donations, they need to be trained on the doctrine and the procedures, including the use of gloves, but the fact that they need to be pleasant, accept things, and thank people for their generosity. And so everybody needs to be trained on that ahead of time, so they're ready for these donations, because you can well understand that it's probably going to happen. The other thing that you need to do to prepare is have all of your documents available. Like, you know, John Sheed mentioned having the form 6455. You don't want to start scrambling around, running around the shelter trying to find that form when you've got people there with donations. So have all of your forms and that simple form. Have all of that stuff available there. We're going to talk about you know, a tax receipt, for example. Have everything ready at your site where you're going to be receiving all of this stuff. Have it there, have it available, have it ready. Have pens, you know, something as simple as that. Have envelopes to put all your documents in. Be prepared to receive these donations. Think ahead with where you're going to store these things. It may mean that you're going to have to request a box truck have logistics park a box truck out there, and that's where the stuff is going to get stored. Be prepared to know with your partners, do you have to deliver the stuff to them, or are they going to come and pick it up? Have all those things in your back pocket. Okay. Accepting and handling of the donations, again, and keep in mind, we're talking about a non-COVID environment here for the most part. Red Cross will accept donations only at the shelters and at the Red Cross office in the disaster affected area. So we won't be accepting donations, and if somebody shows up at one of these other sites, they need to be directed to one of those two places. We don't accept donations at the kitchen site. You can only imagine how problematic that might be. At fixed distribution site where people are already distributing goods, we don't want to have donations dropped off there and mixed with our distribution items. We don't accept them at a MARC, the multi-agency resource centers that might be set up, or the local assistance center. And we don't accept donations outside of the disaster area. I'm in Salem, Oregon, and I distinctly remember during a couple of serious hurricane events in Louisiana, and we had appliances donated to our office in Salem, and they were just dumped in our parking lot. So you can well imagine we ended up having to pay to dispose of them. So again, we don't accept donations outside the affected area. Okay, try to get this is definitely a delay. Okay, one of the things that, well, let's see here. Well, this system is just not being nice to me today.
Yeah, you got it right now. You're on the right.
Okay. Again, we are going to accept the donations. We're going to be pleasant, and we need to label those donations, whether it's clothing or towels or whatever it might be. So again, part of the things you're going to have at your receiving area are labels. You need to have receipts if somebody wants a receipt. And this is another part, and John Sheed and I can, we can discuss this together if you like. If the donation qualifies as an in-kind item, you need to report that to the in-kind lead, and you need to store it separately. Now, that's going to start to become a real judgment factor. If a corporate donor drops off, say Nike drops off 42 cases of sweatsuits, that should be a red flag to you that we probably should contact the IKD folks and ask them what to do with these things. So if there's any question about whether it is either in-kind donation or an unsolicited donation, call the IKD lead and ask before you do anything with it. Again, gift cards, excluding gas cards, have to be handled the same as cash. So one of the things that you're going to want to have at your receiving area are envelopes, either donation envelopes, because some people are just going to insist on handing you a $20 bill. So you need to try to direct that elsewhere to the redcross.org site. But if they insist on giving you cash, you're going to need to put it in an envelope, seal it up, have 2 people sign it, and make sure you get that to the mass care lead so they can properly store it and distribute it. And I have a really interesting photo that just popped up on my screen. Is everybody else?
Got the picture of the tent too.
Yeah, me too. That's not mine. John Sheed? John Sheed? Because he loaded the power pin. Okay, so while he's doing that, there we go. Are we back now? Can everybody see the slide?
I can see it.
Yes, you're back.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay. So cash, you need to make sure that it's kept in a secure place and handled and sent to the appropriate place for handling. You don't want to just throw it in a drawer and keep it somewhere. Okay. Okay, there's a few things that we do not accept under any conditions, really. Homemade food of any kind, expired, damaged, or open packaged foods, soiled, torn, stained, or odorous clothing. And the reality is you're not going to know really very much about that. if things are in bags and so on, you're not going to sort through the bags um, and make that decision. You're gonna take the bag and you're gonna put it in the truck or the room or whatever you have. We also don't accept houseware, furniture, and similar large items like that. Certainly not appliances. Okay, are there any questions before we go any further with this?
I have no questions in the chat yet.
You have none?
I have none.
Okay.
They're asking for the deck, the slide deck, and I'm trying to upload it to.
Okay.
Yeah, I just got, Liz is asking, should we deny the donation or take it and say thank you very much, then find a way to dispose of it? Get to yes.
Well, we need to get the yes, but the reality, we don't want to accept those items that we just said that we don't take. We don't have any. We don't want to have a bunch of old broken down uh, microwaves and appliances and that sort of thing. We have no way. That costs money for the Red Cross to dispose of that stuff. And so we need to direct those people to the proper location to donate those, which again is a part of the preparation. You need to know who those people are and where they are in the community so that you can redirect that. If somebody kicks it out of their truck and says, it's yours, you deal with it, then I guess we'll deal with it. But you truly have to try to find redirect them the best you can. Okay, here's another form, a donations management tax receipt. It's important for you to have these on hand and be able to offer these to people that are donating. Okay, rarely do we distribute items at shelters. I know at one point there was a big effort, said, okay, we take the donated items, we set up a table in the shelter, we create a quote store, let people come and pick and choose and whatever. We really don't, that is not an encouraged activity at this point. We have no way of knowing how clean those things are, whether they've got cat hair, dog hair, fleas, lice, whatever on them. So rarely do we make donations available to clients directly, and only if the shelter manager directs that to happen. The exceptions are water, like in sealed containers. If somebody comes by and offers a case of water, we're going to accept that. New underwear, socks, and other personal items in original packaging, and this is the key here, in sufficient quantity for everyone, and again, that can only be done with the shelter manager's permission for distribution. Okay, these are the items. Well, I didn't touch that slide, but it moved away. I don't know what to say. They have to be used to enhance service delivery, and again, by permission of the shelter manager. So these are decisions the shelter manager is going to need to make based on the complexity of the operation and so on. Okay, again, if you have a question about whether it's UDM or IKD, and we certainly love our acronyms, if it's a large quantity of new items and it's a part of the service delivery plan, you need to coordinate with in-kind donations. If donations are from a corporate donor, valued at $250 or more, we need to consider getting in touch with in-kind donation. And I'm hearing myself echo here. And if there's any question about whether it is or is not.
I'm going to mute everybody. Unmute yourself, please, Diane.
Unmute myself. Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
all right. I'm just trying to move the slide ahead, and it always takes a minute. Some of the questions that people ask, what do I do if somebody gives me cash or a gift card? And again, even though we're not, a gift card, we could very easily get people coming up and handing us gift cards at a shelter. How do I process it? Again, you're going to accept the donation, thank them, get an envelope, seal it, have a couple of people, sign the outside of the envelope, document what's in it, and then make sure it's kept secure and given to your supervisor or your manager. And giving access to donated items, again, we don't have any way to sort, sanitize, repair, and we don't have any way to make sure that our service is equitable when we allow people just to pick and paw through donated items. So, are there any questions? Jamshid?
I see none right now. Okay, so I did put the slide deck in the chat. If you would like to download it, you can. Okay, so no questions at this point. We move on forward. Camilla, would you like to start?
I'm going to let you keep control, and I'm going to have you move it to the next slide. And so we're at time, so I'll just give a quick overview.
Okay.
So
we have a half hour.
Oh,
Yeah,
we do?
yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Oh, great. So the way that what is the fundraising team at the Red Cross? And what we do is every region has fundraising teams, and we work also with the national. We have national support, and so for the most part, what happens is we know our job is to support all the initiatives and all the work that the American Red Cross does. And so we want to make sure that when we have disasters, we have all the right materials, we have the right equipment, we have everything that we need. So what we do is we build relationships with our with corporate partners all over the country. And the way that we do that is we have a national database that we all use, all the fundraisers use, and we use Salesforce. And what is nice about Salesforce is it allows us to know who the contacts are that we work with. We used to have relationship managers in every community working with particular partners, but now wherever the headquarters are, that is where the lead relationship manager resides and works with that partner. And so what we do in steady state is we're building these relationships so that we can fund disaster services, that we can fund RC View, that we can fund everything that we are ready to pre-deploy and get people on site and to do the work of the Red Cross so that we can serve our communities. What we have these partnerships. Actually, you can move the slide. 2 slides. Okay. So we have partnerships with every company imaginable. And I think one of the takeaways that is so important is when we have disasters, really work with your in-kind team, right? They will know and they will be able to check and see if we have a relationship, and they will then also be able to see who should be working with that partner or with that corporate partner. And they will also know. So what happens is, say I'm working on an event. Jamshid would reach out to me and say, oh, you are the relationship manager for Uber, or let's say Clorox. Joy is the relationship with Clorox. So we need more, we're going to need more Clorox. We're going to need more bags. We need this and that. So Joy already has a relationship with Clorox. She will then look at that, speak with that partner and try to meet the need, right? They will have a conversation about that. Now, sometimes there are people who come up and they're not part of, we're not working with them actively, but they all of a sudden are moved by this disaster, or they hear that we might have a need, or they have something that they would like to offer us. So they will call the Red Cross, and then we have a way that we can suss that out. But what I really want you, if you go to the next slide, is we have disaster levels. And so this kind of shows you in steady state, we're always trying to just fund the mission of the Red Cross. But once we start to have disasters, there's different levels of disasters. And the reason that it's nice to know the levels is you're going to hear this on calls, and they're going to say, oh, this is a level 5 or this is a level 4. When we start these increments, that means that not only are we fundraisers having to raise the funds that we typically have to raise for the Red Cross, these are often, this particular disaster is going to cost, we're estimating it's going to cost this much money. And that's why we have to raise more money for that specific event or disaster. Sometimes it can be, for example, in the last few years, because we've had so many California wildfires, that will become one disaster that we're fundraising for, as opposed to specific, like Northern California or Southern California. It's basically, this is the Western wildfires or the California wildfires. And then, but this shows you that they start to escalate. And that is that we're serving so many people, the needs are great, the feeding is great. And so that escalates how our services, what we expect that we're going to have to pay, right? So that's important. So what happens when we start to get to a level 3? That's when we come out of our steady state, because what I do every day with all the fundraisers at the Red Cross, we're always fundraising to do our mission. But once a disaster starts to get to a level 3 or 4, leadership can then determine, we need to activate what we call a disaster fundraising action plan. And so that means now things are getting escalated. We're going to have to really focus on this particular event or this particular disaster. And so when we activate that, that is an internal system that we have in place with our fundraisers, and everybody has a role. So we engage our board members. We have to have special data processing, because we're going to get those extra dollars. We get more checks coming in. We are going to have to work with the fundraising communications, and just to get the message out, and the social messaging, and also to make an appeal that we need to raise money for this. So we have everybody has a place that is on the fundraising team. We all have jobs. The really important job is working with our IKD, and I can't tell you how important that is. It's so important that I even have Jamshid's phone number with me at all times. If we ever have a disaster, I've got Jamshid on the line, right? Because we have to really communicate well with IKD, because, and for other donations. But what happens is there will be incidences where we need materials, we need additional things, and we have relationships with a lot of our donors. So if you go to the next slide, Jamshid, this has, when we're creating these partnerships, we are talking to them about, okay, here we have steady state, but when we don't have steady state, would you be available, or can we put part of this part of your donation can we appeal to you during times of disaster, or will you provide us with such and such? And so all these take time and they're contracts. So what we do is we try to get the ideal state, and this is whether you're doing external relations or community relations or whatever you're doing, the time to have conversations about building your partnership, being available to assist the Red Cross in time of need, is having that relationship strong and getting the agreement signed in steady state. So when we're in steady state, we can then go back and forth. I mean, often we have our attorney has to approve it and we send it to their attorney, and the wording has to be right because they're going to be able to get benefits where they can message that, oh, we are helping the American Red Cross. And all that messaging has to be in line with what Red Cross allows them to message. So it's a constant back and forth. But the time to do this is always, if you can, in steady state, so that you're prepared, that all you have to do is turnkey execute when you are in a disaster. Now that's the ideal. Does that happen all the time? No, but at least that is what the ideal is. Now we often, if we don't have a relationship with someone and we don't have a relationship manager, we have a form, and that's the next slide. And you can't see this, but this is on the exchange. It's also on our website. And this is, I think, one of the finest tools that we have, because during times of disasters, companies, and they come from everywhere. Everybody has such big hearts. They all want to support. And so I've had someone call and say, we have cough drops, and they wanted to give us like pallets of cough drops. And so what is really good, sometimes we need it, sometimes we don't. We have this form, and if we, the in-kind donation person is the one who would be sending this to them, but it allows you, when we don't accept everything, we ask people to fill out this form because it really allows them to see if they are prepared to help us in the way that we can. Like everything that we accept, we need to have palleted. We need the individual who is giving us the donation has to pay for the shipping, or make sure that they are getting the transportation. And so this form it kind of whittles away the people that maybe this isn't the right fit. And so that saves a lot of people time. But the key is that we all work together, and working through the in-kind, they know how to get a hold of us as fundraisers, and we're here to engage our partners and to engage the American people so that they can support the Red Cross. That's what we're here to do. And however we can do that, when we can work best with in-kind, that is, we're just all here to support one another. So that's kind of what fundraising does, is we make sure that we can continue to do the great work that we do. So that was, does anybody have any questions? I think I saw some things, maybe Jamshid, are there any questions that came up?
No, at this point, we don't have any.
Okay. And so the other thing that I would suggest is, I've been with Red Cross 9 years, and I've been on a lot of different disasters. And so sometimes we've had different agreements, and Jamshid had mentioned that earlier. And I just really want to reinforce that our agreements change, and our donors, we might have had an agreement 1 year and then we were able to go to specific stores. Well, sometimes that doesn't work out for the vendors. Sometimes it's a nightmare for them to track that. And so then the next year when we're having our conversations, they're like, oh, that didn't work so well. Our managers didn't like that, or that took too much time. And so our relationships are always fluid, and the process that they want things to go through changes. So just because we did something last year doesn't mean that we are going to be doing it this year. So that's why it's really important to work with the in-kind donation team. So.
Okay, so there is a question. How or does your office take requests for philanthropic donations for a new requirement or a potential equipment or requirements?
I'm not, could you,
Okay, could you please go ahead and unmute yourself and
Yes.
say, Jerry?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, if there's a probable new requirement that can be anticipated that will cost tens of thousands of dollars, maybe more in a steady state to be ready for a disaster, can we make, can some level of the Red Cross make a request that your office seek funds to pay for that probable requirement? I mean, if we've determined as an agency that we're going to do something, but we don't have the money to pay for it at this point?
Well, what would the way that if the DR has a request, then they will come to us and we will work with the partner, right? And we will go and talk to the partner and ask and invite them to support us. So who are you, when you're asking this question, are you asking that it's, who's the person wanting that, right? Who's wanting to start that relationship?
Let me give you a little bit of quick background. Right now, we have millions of single-use plastic water bottles that are donated by a variety of different companies for disasters to hydrate. And we do maintain some water. But so what if we were to want to use cardboard boxed water that the companies producing it could not just give it to us? It would not be an in-kind donation. It would be something Red Cross might have to buy. How would we go about getting the money to pay for something like that?
That wouldn't be at our
So it's
level.
kind of a rhetorical question.
That relationship or that decision does not even come down to any of our levels. That is
Okay, if I may jump in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so looking for a specific item which we want in very large quantities. Normally what we do is we go ahead and try to find and identify a company which will be able to provide us the service. And at that point, we find out where their headquarters are. And once we have that, then we go ahead and contact the fundraiser or development officer in that city to go ahead and contact them and start the negotiations. So that way, you know, we're allowing our fundraisers and our relation managers to do their job. At the same time, we're the ones who are initiating and asking them to go ahead and start a relationship with that company. And that is the best way because they have the tools to be able to reach the company. Now, on a smaller scale, if let's say I'm on a DR and I cannot find what we need in any of the national companies or companies that we have access to, I go ahead and start making calls to the smaller companies. There's nothing stops me from doing that and creating a new relationship. But again, as soon as the relationship is established, then I pass it along to the local or to whoever that may be in that area that will be responsible for continuing that relationship, and make sure that the development officer understands that we have a relationship with this company now and they need to take over and work with that company more. I hope that answers your
ill-framed question, but good answers.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, let's see.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions here. One of which has to do with where do MOUs fall in this conversation? Local restaurant wants to donate food in an apartment fire. From my perspective, and John Sheed, you can jump in on this too, but generally we would consider that to be an in-kind donation because it is budget relieving. If we didn't get some donated food, we would have to buy it.
Okay, if it is a one-time deal, somebody is offering us food, maybe even 2 or 3, 4 times, it doesn't require a MOU. If a company, let's say like Quiznos, comes to us and says, we want to go ahead and provide you with sandwiches anytime that you have a need, then at that point we need to have an MOU with them so they understand what our expectations are and we understand what they can actually provide. So it depending on the scale of the services being offered or accepted by us. That's the time that the MOU comes in. And at this point, I think in at least in Pacific, we are all working with a lot of different restaurants to make sure that they are ready for our non-congregate and congregate feeding under COVID, and making sure that they understand that the food that we want have to be packaged in a certain way.
Right. And I think the real key here is an MOU would typically be done before an event. The local restaurant wanting to donate food as a result of an apartment fire is kind of in the middle of a response, and it's probably IKD, but you don't have to have an MOU. You just accept it and give them a receipt if they want it. Is that correct, John Sheed?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question, if we are on the ground, such as in a shelter, and are approached about a significant donation, how do we connect the donor to fundraising?
Okay.
So you would talk to the person at the shelter. I mean, you would talk to the lead at the shelter and just let them know, and they'll get in touch with the fundraising. Because if we have a shelter open, they will get it to the fundraiser. I mean, they will elevate that, and then the fundraising team can steward that and work through that process.
Okay. Yeah.
May I
You're
jump
going to
in
want to
there?
you're going to
Please.
want to
That
contact
asked the
headquarters.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would be the shelter manager, and so I'm asking because I don't know.
Okay, so
Yeah.
as a shelter manager, you would go ahead and call the local chapter and ask for the fundraiser or for the development officer at the chapter, and they will go ahead and take over from that location, that part. If it is not possible, then you move up to the region and ask for a regional officer, fundraising officer, to go ahead and take over for you.
And this is Diane. And I think if you're in a shelter and somebody comes to you and said, "Hey, we want to donate $10,000," I think you're going to want to contact somebody at headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
And very frankly, the in-kind donation person is going to know who the fundraisers are, and because you're going to want to pass that off as quickly as possible. And headquarters may be as quick as you're going to get it gone from your plate.
Thank you.
There's another question here from Carolyn. Should the acquiring of partner organizations for UDM be confirmed during steady state as we do for shelter sites? And the answer to that is, if you're in a I don't know, an event-prone area, yes, you may want to have some agreements made. You're going to want to work with your community partners, community engagement personnel, and maybe figure out what that's going to be. If you're not in in a real hazardous prone area, it's not as important. There are other things that are maybe important, but it is a steady state activity for sure.
Okay, so in general, we do have a MOU with a Salvation Army. It just, you have to make sure that your local Salvation Army is aware of it. And if they're not, you can just present them with a copy of it. But not necessarily Salvation Army always will be available.
Well, in this area, we don't have any Salvation Army stores. So that, I mean, unless it's in Portland, but so I think that really is a local, you have to look at what your resources are locally and what may be the best for you. Next, there's a question here, I think, about donations from Althea, or
Anthea.
Go
do you
ahead,
think
please.
corporations will be less willing to donate this year or next due to the drop in the economy, drop in people spending, etc.?
Well, we are always working on our relationships and trying to monitor that as best as we can. We definitely have some segments that are really being impacted tremendously right now. And so we will definitely see a decline in those areas. And then there are other businesses that are doing better, and we just give everyone the opportunity to support us. So we will, we definitely think that it will be a trying year, but we're still going to go out there, and our mission is so important that we just will try to inspire people to support the work that we're doing. So.
Okay, so Liz is asking, is there a place for all the MOUs for UDMs? I don't know of any location that has all of them. You might be able to find some on Exchange.
But again, a lot of that's going to be very, very local specific. So I think there's another question there about taxes on products.
Okay, so we do not pay taxes on any product. We have a tax exempt letter for every state, for every county that you can download from the IKD hub on Exchange and present whoever that's for purchasing, obviously, you're talking about. And we present them with the tax ID number and the exempt letter, so we do not pay sales taxes at all. And just something about, like, you know, the large companies, as of end of the year, we will no longer be able to use the proxy numbers at Home Depot. They have changed the way that they are going to be presenting us with their contribution. So that whole shopping at Home Depot with the proxy is going out the door, and we have to just purchase as usual with them. Okay, any other questions?
Do you ever ask for goods in steady state? For example, when a company renews computers, can we get their old ones? That is not, that's a good question. I have worked in places where we did get second used computers. It really is a challenge. And so the Red Cross does not do that. We have a whole technology strategy that comes from National, and there's a lot of security. And so it is a holistic approach of how we get our computers and what we're able to use. And so we do not ever accept other people's computers. We actually have a whole strategy of replacement, and that is there's so many reasons why, but a lot of it is because for the safety reasons. And as you can see, we often, it can be tricky using Red Cross technology, but a lot of it has to do is that we have to try to be as secure as possible. And so they use their technology strategy, and we do not take used equipment.
So in-kind donation used to be only active in disaster relief operations. We are slowly pivoting towards steady state as well. So if sometimes we have needs of certain pieces of equipment, then we go to our donors, our company donors, to be able to get those. And so it is slowly pivoting toward that, but we're still not totally active in steady state at this point. And we're working on setting that up so we have to pay less for services and goods that we may need. Any other questions? Okay, perfect. It is 8:31. We are 1 minute over the limit time that we set up. We did absolutely good. Okay, and
Thank you all. Appreciate you being here.
and you have my email address. If you need anything, please give me a call, send me an email. And if you're interested in kind donation, we are forming a Pacific Division in-kind donation team. And let me know that you're interested so I can invite you to our next meeting.
Thank you all for your good work and for supporting the Red Cross.